Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your source material, your research, articles, and notes, and distill it into the knowledge you need.
Today, we're getting into the mechanics behind, well, behind getting things done at an extraordinary level.
Yeah.
We're talking about objectives and key results.
Right, OKRs. And this isn't just theory. We're looking at the actual operating system that was foundational for companies like Intel, the Gates Foundation, and, of course, Google.
Especially Google. It was adopted there back in 1999, and it pretty much became the company's operating manual.
And all the sources really hammer home one central point we have to start with. A great idea is, it's the easy part.
Execution is everything.
Exactly. And Larry Page, Google's co-founder, he called this system a tremendous gift. He said it's what allowed them to chase these crazily bold missions and actually make them, maybe even achievable.
So the mission for us today is to really unpack how this goal-setting protocol works, how it turns big, abstract ambitions into something you can actually measure and achieve.
So at the very highest level, what are we talking about? It's pretty simple, right?
It is. An objective is the what. It's where you're going. It has to be significant, action-oriented, and this is key. It has to be inspirational.
And then the key results, the KRs, that's the how. That's the measurement.
Right. These are the metrics that tell you if you're getting there. And Marissa Mayer had a great line on this. It's not a key result unless it has a number.
No ambiguity. It has to be specific, measurable, time-bound, verifiable.
Exactly. If you can check off all the key results, then you've hit your objective. Simple as that.
Okay, so to really get this, we have to go back to the beginning. Where did this all come from?
It all starts at Intel in the 1970s with Andy Grove. He was the great communicator and sort of the taskmaster in chief there.
And Grove understood that just being brilliant wasn't enough. You had to deliver.
He had this core philosophy that, knowledge is one thing, but action is what matters. He basically said, it almost doesn't matter what you know. It's what you can do that tends to be valued here.
And their slogan wasn't about being the smartest. It was just
Intel delivers.
that focus on just getting it done. It wasn't just a gut feeling, though. There's some real psychology behind it.
There is. Back in 1968, a psychologist named Edwin Locke found that setting specific, difficult goals leads to way higher performance than easier, vague ones.
The hard goals principle.
And it's been confirmed by like 1,000 studies since. It's the engine that drives OKRs.
But Grove wasn't working in a vacuum. There was an earlier system, a precursor, right?
Yes, and understanding its flaws is key to seeing why OKRs work so well.
Yeah.
We're talking about Peter Drucker's management by objective, or MBOs.
This was from the 50s, right? The idea of consulting your subordinates on goals.
Which was revolutionary at the time. Drucker got that involvement, creates commitment.
So on the surface, MBOs sound pretty good. So where did they go wrong? How are OKRs so different?
The differences are just. They're profound. And they really explain the different cultural outcomes. The failures of MBOs basically gave OKRs a roadmap for what not to do.
Okay, let's break that down. The first big difference is timing, right?
Right. MBOs were typically annual. They'd be set once a year.
A whole year? I mean, a business can completely change in a year.
Exactly. They got stale. They became irrelevant. OKRs, on the other hand, run on a much faster cadence. Quarterly or monthly. Much more agile.
Okay, and what about transparency?
That's maybe the biggest cultural shift. MBO goals were usually private, siloed within a department. The left hand had no idea what the right hand was doing.
Which sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It was. OKRs are radically public and transparent. Everyone's goals, from the CEO all the way down, are visible to the entire company.
That feels vulnerable. Putting your goals out there for everyone to see, especially if you might fail.
It is vulnerable, and that vulnerability is actually essential for alignment, which we'll get to. But let's talk command structure. MBOs were strictly top-down.
Handed down from on high.
Yep. OKRs are different. They encourage goals to be set bottom-up or sideways. The idea is that frontline employees should set about half of their own key results.
Because they know their work best. It gives them buy-in.
Exactly. But the most critical difference, I think, is how they handle incentives.
Tying goals to your paycheck.
MBOs were almost always tied to compensation.
Yeah.
Your bonus, your salary, your stock options. And that creates a really perverse incentive.
It creates risk aversion.
Yeah.
You don't want to set a goal that's too hard because you might miss it and lose your bonus.
Precisely. You get what's called sandbagging. People intentionally aim low so they can guarantee they hit their numbers. You're basically paying for mediocrity.
So OKRs fix this how?
They severed that link.
Yeah.
They're mostly divorced from compensation. And that one change completely flips the script. You're no longer aiming for a safe bet. You're encouraged to be aggressive, to be aspirational.
So failing to hit a huge goal is actually okay.
It's more than okay, it's often expected, as long as you learn something significant. MBOs were about safe, incremental gains. OKRs are about chasing massive wins.
Which brings us back to Google, the ultimate moonshot company.
Absolutely. When John Doerr brought this system to them in 1999, the whole company, maybe 30 people, were all gathered around a ping pong table.
The classic startup boardroom.
And Doerr actually set his own OKR for that presentation.
What was it?
The objective was to build a planning model for Google. Simple enough. But his key results were perfect. KR1, finish the presentation on time.
Check.
KR2, create a sample set of Google OKRs. And KR3, get management to agree to a 3-month trial.
Perfectly measurable. You either did it or you didn't.
And obviously he did. That trial stuck. And OKRs became the scaffolding for all of Google's biggest hits. Search, Chrome, Android Maps, YouTube.
All those billion user products.
And the commitment was real. Larry Page, in the early days, would spend 2 full days every quarter personally reviewing the OKRs of every single software engineer.
Every single one. That is an incredible level of commitment from the top.
It sends a message, right? This isn't just paperwork. This is how we operate. It's how they institutionalize that think big mandate.
Okay, so that brings us to the first big superpower of this system. Focus and commit to priorities.
This is all about making hard choices. Larry Page called it putting more wood behind fewer arrows.
Saying no to good ideas so you can say yes to the truly great ones.
Right, and you see this so clearly in the story of Remind, the education tech platform.
The founder, Brett Koff, he had a really personal connection to the idea of focus. He dealt with ADHD and dyslexia.
He did, and he had a teacher who helped him by just saying, let's just pick one thing and talk about it. That became a core rule for his company.
And Remind grew incredibly fast, right? Capitalizing on smartphones in schools.
Explosively, sometimes 80,000 new users a day. But they fell into a classic startup trap. They were tracking the wrong thing.
They were focused on registered users, which sounds normal. Why was that wrong?
Because it's a vanity metric. Someone can sign up and then never, ever use the app again. It doesn't tell you if you're actually providing value.
Especially since their real customer was the teacher. If teachers don't use it, the platform is dead.
So their OKR process forced them to ask that hard question. What's the one thing that actually matters? And they shifted their focus entirely.
Oh, what?
To active engagement. Weekly active teachers, or WAT, and monthly active teachers, MAT, along with retention.
Ah, so metrics that actually prove the product is being used and is valuable.
Exactly. It forced the whole team to optimize for the teacher's daily workflow, not just for downloads.
And to really commit to that focus, Koff did something pretty memorable.
He did. In their little office, he taped the company's objectives to the bathroom mirror, right over the toilet.
So you literally could not avoid confronting the company's top priority multiple times a day.
That's commitment. But focus is only half the battle. You also have to commit, especially when the goal is huge.
Like with the Nuna story, Ginny Kim's healthcare data platform.
Her goal was just massive. Build the first ever database for all Medicaid members in the U.S. That's, what, 74.5 million people?
A huge, important goal. But her first attempt at rolling out OKRs actually failed.
It did, and it's a critical lesson. It failed because the leadership team didn't fully commit up front. They saw it as just another process, not as a core tool.
So people just didn't do it. Or they did it once and forgot about it.
Pretty much. Some never set their individual OKRs. Others wrote them down and then, as the source says, just stuck them in a drawer.
So what did Kim have to do? She had to basically chase everyone down.
She did, via email, Slack, text messages, relentlessly. And it's not about micromanagement. It was about enforcing the commitment to defining your role in the mission.
Forcing those hard conversations up front.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once they were committed, Nuna stopped just reacting to things and started acting with purpose on a quarterly plan. And that's what allowed them to actually build that incredibly complex platform.
Okay, that makes sense. So that brings us to the second superpower, align and connect for teamwork.
And this is where that radical transparency really pays off. When everyone's goals are public, you naturally start breaking down silos.
And you start connecting individual work to the company's big mission. The data on this is pretty stark. Something like 92% of people say they'd be more motivated if their colleagues could see their goals.
Right, but the reality is most people are working in the dark. Only about 7% of employees say they actually understand their company's business strategy.
That's a huge gap.
A huge gap between strategy and execution.
Mm.
And the old way of trying to solve this was something called the Grand Cascade.
That's the top-down model. The C-suite sets the goals, and they get passed down layer by layer.
Like tablets from Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
And it sounds logical, but it has some really bad side effects.
The first being that it's just incredibly slow.
A huge loss of agility.
Yeah.
The whole process could take months. Second, there's no flexibility. No one wants to change a goal mid-cycle because of the bureaucratic nightmare it would create for everyone below them.
So it encourages people to just stick with the plan, even if the plan is wrong.
Right. And third, it marginalizes the people on the front lines. It shuts out their ideas and insights.
And finally, it only aligns people vertically. It does nothing for cross-team collaboration.
Which is where all the interesting work happens in a complex company. So what Google needed was something more like a market economy than a military command. Transparency creates the signals that let teams align naturally.
You see what happens without that transparency in the story of MyFitnessPal.
Yeah. After they were acquired by Under Armour for nearly $500 million, suddenly Mike Lee is running this huge division, and the silos create immediate friction.
What did that friction actually look like?
At a big leadership meeting, he found out that the e-commerce team, the data team, and the media sales team all had their own plans for what MyFitnessPal was going to build for them.
And none of them had actually talked to the MyFitnessPal team about it.
Exactly. As Lee put it, it was our old problem at MyFitnessPal, on steroids. They had all these unacknowledged dependencies. Everyone was counting on them for different things, and they didn't have the capacity to do any of it.
So OKRs forced them to have a very honest, very public conversation about what was actually possible.
It forced them to admit they couldn't do everything. And it led them to make a hard choice. Their number one objective was growing the premium subscription. That was it.
And that clarity allowed them to say no to all these other requests because they had a clear, visible, shared priority.
That's alignment in action. And you see it on a global scale at Intuit.
Right. The CIO, Atticus Tyson, was trying to manage this massive shift to the cloud.
And he knew if he just forced OKRs on people, he'd get bureaucratic compliance, not real commitment. So he rolled them out to all 600 IT employees.
And the transparency immediately helped connect their global teams.
Immediately. They have teams in the Bay Area, Texas, Bangalore. Suddenly, the team in India working on the billing system could see exactly how their project connected all the way up to the top-level company objectives.
There was that quote from one of the engineers in Bangalore.
Yeah. Now I understand how what I'm doing in India connects to the company mission.
That's it. That's the goal. Turning a task into a contribution.
Exactly. Transparency connects the code in India to the strategy in the C-suite.
Okay, so our third superpower, track for accountability. This is about moving away from that set it and forget it mentality.
Right. OKRs are living things. They need to be checked on regularly. We know that just writing down goals and sharing them makes you 43% more likely to achieve them, but you have to keep engaging with them.
So during these regular check-ins, you have options. It's not just pass or fail.
No. Tracking gives you 4 choices. First, you can just continue. That's the green zone. You're on track.
The second is to update. Maybe you need to tweak a key result or shift the timeline.
Right. The yellow zone. And the third option is really important. Stop.
Just abandon the goal.
If it's not working, or if it's become irrelevant, yes, you have to have the discipline to kill it. Remindo did this with a peer-to-peer payment feature they built. Nobody used it, so they killed it and moved on.
Sticking with a bad idea is worse than admitting it was a bad idea. And the last option,
refactor or restart. This is when the goal is still the right one, but your plan to get there was flawed. You go back to the drawing board.
We can see this kind of accountability at a massive scale with the Gates Foundation, a $20 billion startup.
And with a mission that huge, everyone deserves a healthy and productive life. You need incredible discipline with your money.
So they needed a way to measure the impact of their investments. They needed a specific metric.
They did, and they used something called DAILY, Disability-Adjusted Life Years.
Daily. Can you break that down? What is that actually measuring?
It's a way to measure the total burden of a disease. It combines the years of life lost to dying early with the years of healthy life lost to being sick or disabled.
So it lets them compare totally different problems on the same scale, like the impact of river blindness versus malaria.
Exactly. It lets them scientifically compare the cost-effectiveness of different interventions. It quantifies human impact, which forces accountability.
And Bill Gates himself was a stickler for this.
He was. He would turn down huge grants if the goals weren't clear enough or if they weren't measured in dailies. The system gave him the confidence that he was making the right call.
And this kind of rigor isn't just for philanthropy. It can be about corporate survival. Which brings us to Intel and Operation Crush.
This was 1979, an existential moment for Intel. They were getting hammered by Motorola in the microprocessor market.
And the campaign's rallying cry was memorable.
To put it mildly, we have to crush the Fed King bastards. It was an all-out war.
But they translated that aggression into a very specific, measurable OKR.
Yes. The objective was to win the 16-bit market. The key result was a massive stretch goal. 2,000 design wins, basically client agreements to use their chip in 1 year.
Which was triple what they had done the previous year.
A huge, huge number. And it required weekly, rigorous tracking from every part of the company, engineering, marketing, sales.
But the real genius was in the incentive they created, the Tahiti trip.
The famous Tahiti trip. Every sales rep who hit their quota would get a trip for 2 to Tahiti. But there was a catch.
The catch was brilliant.
It was. If just one person in a sales district failed to hit their quota, the entire district lost the trip.
So it leverages peer pressure. It makes accountability a team sport. Your failure is my failure.
It totally eliminated complacency. And the result? They blew past the goal, hitting over 2,300 design wins. They won the war. And that victory led them to bet the entire company on microprocessors.
An incredible story, which leads perfectly into the final superpower, stretch for amazing.
This is where OKRs really push you. It's about aiming for things that seem impossible. Conservative goal setting just doesn't lead to innovation.
Andy Grove believed these big, stretchy goals, these BHAs, big, hairy, audacious goals, get the most out of people.
And this is the whole philosophy behind Google's gospel of 10x.
Right. A 10% improvement means you're just doing the same thing as everyone else, but a little better.
But a 1,000% improvement, a 10x improvement, forces you to rethink the entire problem from the ground up.
Gmail's the classic example.
It is. Everyone else was offering maybe 2 or 4 megabytes of storage. Google didn't offer 10. They offered a full gigabyte, 500 times more. They just solved the problem overnight.
But if you're setting these goals that are designed to be almost impossible, how do you grade them? How do you avoid punishing people for failing?
You have to separate your goals into 2 types. You have committed goals, which are things that absolutely must get done. Hitting a sales number, a product launch date, those have to be hit 100%.
But then you have the stretch goals.
The aspirational OKRs. And for those, you redefine success. Success is defined as hitting maybe 60 or 70% of the target.
So getting a 0.6 or a 0.7 is considered a win. That feels really counterintuitive.
It is, but it's crucial. It means you pushed your team to its limits and you achieved something significant. In fact, if a team is always scoring 1.0 on their aspirational goals, that's a red flag.
That means they're not aiming high enough. They're sandbagging.
Exactly. This creates psychological safety. It makes it okay to fail as long as you learn from it. And that's what allowed the Google Chrome team to even exist.
They set out in 2008 to build a whole new web browser from scratch.
And their key result was to get 20 million active users in the first year, starting from 0.
And they failed.
They failed. They missed the mark. And they missed it again in 2009, hitting 38 million against a goal of 50 million.
Most companies would have pulled the plug after 2 years of missing goals like that.
But the process forced them to dig deeper, to keep stretching. They ended up setting a goal of 111 million users for 2010. Which seemed insane.
And that relentless ambition is what eventually made Chrome the world's dominant browser.
It proves the philosophy. If you aim for the stars, you might just reach the moon.
But the ultimate stretch story has to be YouTube. Susan Wojcicki takes over in 2014, and the company's innovation had slowed down.
She needed a 10x goal. But first, they had to figure out what to measure. They were obsessed with views and clicks.
Metrics that actually encourage short-term superficial engagement.
Right. And they had this philosophical realization that the truly scarce commodity online isn't clicks, it's human attention.
So they pivoted. They changed their core metric from views to watch time.
A revolutionary shift. And they attached a true BHAG to it.
What was the number?
The goal was to reach 1 billion hours of watch time per day.
1 billion hours a day. That was a 10x increase.
It was a goal so big it required every single person at the company to rethink their job. And the commitment was intense. The guy in charge of tracking it, Christos Goudreau, told his boss he would resign if they didn't hit the goal.
Wow.
And that intensity unified everyone. They were behind schedule, but they tracked it relentlessly, made hundreds of small improvements, and they ended up hitting the billion-hour goal ahead of schedule.
And an amazing story of what a single, clear, stretch goal can do.
Mm-hmm. But all of this, all these ambitious goals, they put a lot of pressure on people. So you need a support system.
Which is where the final piece comes in, continuous performance management, or CFRs.
Right. This is the cultural infrastructure that makes OKRs work. CFRs stand for conversations, feedback, and recognition. It's the human side of the system.
And this idea really grew out of the failure of old school HR systems. Look at the Adobe story.
Yeah, their old annual review process was just brutal. Managers were spending 80,000 hours a year on it, company-wide.
And it was just demoralizing people. They saw a spike in people quitting every February right after reviews.
It was a process that created stress, not value. So they did something radical. They just got rid of it.
And replaced it with what they called the check-in.
A system of quarterly goals, regular ongoing feedback, and critically, they decoupled the whole process from compensation.
Just like with OKRs. And the result was a sharp drop in people quitting.
Right. And you see another version of this at Zoom Pizza, the robot pizza startup.
They established these sacred one-on-one conversations. An hour every 2 weeks with every employee.
But here's the crazy part. They have a rule. You do not talk about work.
Okay, I have to ask. For a startup, how is that a good use of time? An hour every 2 weeks not talking about the product.
It's an investment in the person. The agenda is about them. What makes you happy? What saps your energy? What's your dream job?
So by understanding the person, you can better manage their work and prevent burnout.
Precisely. You build trust, you build loyalty. That's the foundation you need when you're asking people for 10x effort all the time.
It's a powerful idea. And finally, you can see how OKRs can actually be used to codify a cultural change. The story of Bono's One campaign.
Right. They were an activist organization fighting poverty, but they were stretched way too thin. Too many goals. No focus.
Until John Doerr asked them that one simple question. Who's the client here?
And it caused this massive shift. They realized they couldn't fight poverty in Africa from offices in North America without real partnership.
The Senegalese proverb, if you want to cut a man's hair, it is better if he is in the room.
Exactly. So the culture change itself became an objective. Proactively integrate African perspectives into the organization.
And they made it measurable with specific key results.
KPIs, like hiring 3 African-based staff, approving 2 African board members, it forced them to take action, not just talk about it. It showed that even for a mission-driven organization, you need that intellectual rigor to have the biggest impact.
So after this whole deep dive, what's the big takeaway for you? We've seen the 4 superpowers.
Focus, like at Remind. Align, at MyFitnessPal and Intuit.
Track, with the Gates Foundation and Operation Crush. And stretch, with Chrome and YouTube.
For me, the biggest takeaway is just how adaptable this system is. It's not just for tech giants. It works for nonprofits, for foundations. I mean, they even use it with elementary school students at the Khan Lab School.
It's a tool that provides clarity and accountability no matter what your mission is. It gives you the framework to stop thinking incrementally and start pursuing something really great.
And that brings us to the final thought. From the man who started it all, Andy Grove, he said, "The reward of having met one of these challenging goals is that you get to play again."
It's about cultivating that ambition, making it safe to fail, and always continuing the pursuit of what matters. We hope this gives you something to explore in your own work this week.